In this video, I'll be teaching you how to cut and sew a circle skirt the right way. But first, let me start by introducing myself. Hi, my name is Lilian of Lilian Fashion Lounge. I talk about everything fashion, pattern drafting, online and physical tutoring, and many more. So, let's get started. So, these are the materials that I'm going to be using. So, this is my main fabric, an African fabric, and this is my zip, my thread, and the lining that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to move straight to cutting. Now you're going to be folding your fabric on bias. So after folding it, I'm going to go ahead to measure my original waist. Now because I'm folding it in two, I'm going to divide my waist measurement plus zip allowance and sewing allowance. I'm going to be dividing my measurement by 2, and I'm going to go ahead and measure it on a straight line across the material. So whatever I get, I'll mark it on the material. Then I'm going to measure it again. I'm going to remeasure what I marked on a straight line from the tip of the bias, the way I folded the bias. So I'm going to measure it. So whatever I get there, I'm going to measure it across the material, that round shape, because our waist is not straight, it is curvy. Proceed to measure the length, my skirt length. So from that line, that is going to be our waist. So I'm going to measure my length. So whatever I get there, I'm going to measure it across the fabric. Can see the length of the fabric is not enough, and that's one of the difficulty that we face when it comes to cutting circle skirts with Ankara. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead to cut it, then I'm going to add another fabric at the tip of the fabric. So I'm going to be pinning it down, then I'm going to be cutting out the excess. After cutting out my fabric, I'm going to take it, I'm going to be cutting the side, because it's going to be having a pocket, so I'm going to be cutting the two sides. Then off camera, I'm going to cut the center back. So we are going to move on to cutting the lining. Now the lining, cutting your lining with your circle skirt is highly optional. Now I will advise that if you want to cut with your lining, make sure that your circle skirt is having pleats. That means you have added pleats when calculating your waist. You have added measurement for pleats. But if you want to cut it without pleats, please, you don't need to, or if you want to cut it without pleats, then you don't need to add lining. And also, if you want to cut it with pockets, you don't need to add your lining. It is okay to cut it on its own. So of course, our lining is going to be shorter than our main fabric. So I'm also going to do the same thing for this one. I'm going to be cutting the sides. To cut that design, the pocket design that we saw at the beginning of the video, I'm going to fold my fabric into two first. I will first fold it into two, then I'm going to measure the length, your desired length. I will advise you you use 4 inches for the length. Then whatever you measure whatever you intend to use for the pocket is what I'm going to use for the width of the design. So after cutting it, I'm going to go ahead to cut 2 more. I'm going to proceed to cutting my band. Now, to cut your band, just like we have always said in my previous videos, I'm going to be using my exact waist. Then I'm going to be adding zip allowance. So my exact waist is 33, then I'll be adding zip allowance, so making it 2 inches. So that's 35. So what I'm going to be cutting here will be 35 inches. This for your band is always 4 inches, half inch for joining at both sides, then 3 inches for the main band. That's for folded fabric. If you want to join it at the 2 sides, at the upper part and at the lower part, then you're going to be using 4.5 inches for the width. To be using my lining I'm going to be using my lining as my pocket. If you have pocketing material, you can use that, but I'm making use of what I have. So I'm going to go ahead and measure the width of my pocket. Now, most of the time I don't measure my width, I just place my hand and cut so far as it is wide. So after cutting my pocket, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to start sewing my fabric. But before I start sewing, I'm going to be marking where my pocket is going to start, because that is what we are starting. That's what we are starting with. So I'll mark the pockets. For this one, I'm going to be using I'm going to be marking 1.5 inches. So my pocket is going to start from 1.5 inches away from the waist. For the pocket design, to get that pocket design, I'm going to be dividing the fabric into 2, and I'm going to mark it. So after marking it, then from the tip of the material, I'm going to measure 2.5 inches, and I'm also going to mark it. So I'm going to be connecting it with my ruler. As you can see, what I'm doing there, from the 2.5 inches to the middle of the material that I marked. So that is where I'm going to be sewing it. That's where I'm going to be sewing it. So after sewing it, I'm going to bring it back to the fabric to place it on the fabric. So from the 1.5 inches that I marked that my pocket is going to start from, I'm going to first of all place my pocket. So after placing my pocket, I'll place the pocket design, and I'm going to pin it down. Now, don't forget that when you want to sew your pocket, you're going to be placing it on the right side, but this time around you're placing both on the wrong side. So after marking the 1 inch, the next thing I'm going to do is to place my zip. I've already marked my 1 inch also for zipper allowance, so I'm just going to place it on the 1 inch mark and pin it down. Then I'm going to go ahead and zip and sew it on both sides. Then after sewing it, I'll bring it back and place my pocket. Now for this one, I'm going to be placing it on the wrong side. Don't forget that for the front, we place that one on the right side, on the wrong side. So this one, we are placing it on the right side, and you also sew on 1/2 inch. So after sewing on 1/2 inch, after sewing the pocket for the back on 1/2 inch, don't forget to also top stitch the seam, the pocket. So after doing that, I took it to my ironing table, then I ironed it. As you can see, it's neat here. So I'm going to be placing the front and the back together, then I'm going to be joining them on 1 inch. So I'm going to be pinning the pockets down. When I get to while sewing, I will sew from the tip to where the pocket stops, then I will continue with the pocket and continue with the fabric. When I get to the end of the pocket, I'll continue with the fabric. And I have gone ahead to fold the hem of my skirt. So as you can see here, it's a very tiny one. So if you want to know more about it, I'm going to be sharing the tutorial in my shorts. So I'm going to move to joining the sides of my lining. So after joining the sides of my lining, I'm also going to fold the hem. You can decide to fold the hem before joining the sides, but either way works. So after joining it, the next thing I'm going to do is to attach it to my main skirt. Now, if you notice, I cut out the center back. Now, the reason why I cut out the center back is the center back is going to be the joining point for both the main fabric and the lining. So I'm going to be showing you how I did it here. So I'm just going to place it each edges at the zipper area. Then I'm going to sew it down to the hem. So after joining the lining and the main fabric together, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to add my band. So I'm going to take it to my ironing table, and I'm going to be folding it on the edges on 1/2 inch, and I'm also going to be folding the middle so that it will be easier to sew. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to sew the edges. I'm going to be sewing the edges on 1/2 inch. Don't forget that I've already added the sewing allowance already. So after folding it on 1/2 inch, after sewing it on 1/2 inch on the wrong side, I will sew the edges also where it's going to be overlapping at the back. So I'm going to also be sewing the lower part on 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to bring it back to the skirt, and I'm going to be joining it on the wrong side. I will first place it on the wrong side, then I will join it. So after joining it, I'll place it on the right side. Then I'm going to be folding it on 1/2 inch, already ironed 1/2 inch. Then I'll be sewing it on the wrong side on the seam. I'll be sewing it on the seam on the wrong side. If you watched it to this point, you are the best. Let me know in the comment section, and if you have any questions for me, please leave it down in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to be seeing you in the next one. Bye.